next our next step is going to be the news session. So we're going to give you the headlines and also the news. So tune in with us. Okay. Thank you. This news session is brought to you by Utama FM, Informasi Minda Anda. So we're gonna start with the sports news. In the sports news, we have from the trades news, Tottenham lost to Liverpool, 2-0 to Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp sideshow their title credentials. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp is approaching the third anniversary of his appointment, a reign that started with a gritty goalless draw against Tottenham at White Hart Lane. The Germans' elation at the end of Saturday's 2-1 win over Spurs at Wembley was even more obvious than usual, after a result and performance that emphasized the giant stride that the club and team have made in that period. This is the best start to the Premier League season. The last time they recorded 5 straight league wins in the opening weeks of campaign was in the 1990. To politics. The Straits Times. The headline is Malaysia opposition blocks repeal of fake news law in challenge to Mahathir. Malaysia's opposition-led Senate blocked an effort to repeal a law against fake news on Wednesday, September 12, presenting the first major challenge for the new government of Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. Tun Mahathir, 93, secured a stunning election in May, ending the decade-long rule of former Premier Najib Razak and changing Malaysia's government for the first time in 6 decades. But the Senate, or upper house of parliament, is still dominated by an opposition led by the defeated Barisan Nasional, the BN coalition, which can block bills and delay government initiatives. Malaysia was among the first few countries to introduce an anti-fake news law, although other countries in the region, including Singapore and the Philippines, have said that they are considering how to tackle fake news. Critics accused Najib of using the law to curb free speech ahead of the May general elections as his government tried to fend off criticism over accusation of graft and mismanagement. In August, the lower house of parliament voted out the anti-fake news bill 2018, which sets out fines of up to 500,000 Malaysian ringgit. And jail up to 6 years of reporting a wholly or partly false news. But the BN Senate leaders and members of the right-wing Islamist Party Islam Se Malaysia, on Wednesday blocked its repeal. The bill will go back to the lower house of parliament for another vote. Co-opted by the US President Donald Trump, the term of fake news has become part of the standard repertoire of leaders in authoritarian countries to describe media reports and organizations critical of them. Just days ahead of the election, Dr. Mahathir himself was accused of spreading fake news after the authorities said they were investigating him over what they said were false claims that his plane was sabotaged. Other leaders opposed to Najib were also charged under the act. Here with economy. The Straits Times. With GST scrapped, Malaysia's inflation expected to decline. Malaysians who already enjoy one of the Southeast Asia's lowest inflation rates are getting an added boon with the removal of a consumption tax. A 6% goods and service tax, which is known as GST, was scrapped by this month, or last month, by Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to meet an election pledge, and a replacement cell levy will not be introduced until September. The new government is also subsidizing some domestic fuel prices for the rest of the year. That is putting downward pressure on inflation and giving back to Bank Negara Malaysia scope to keep an interest rate on hold after an early hike in January. Economists like Mr. Kunga at Australia and New Zealand Banking Group have slashed their inflation projections to 0.7% this year from 2.7% previously. The timing could not have been better for the central bank, which is facing a period of uncertainty following the sudden resignation of Governor Muhammad Ibrahim, with no successor named yet. A slowdown in inflation gives the Malaysian central bank some respite as its counterparts in Asia scramble to tighten monetary policy aimed throughout in emerging market currencies. These are very significant policy moves, said economist Ibn Persulis at Nomura Holding in Singapore, who cuts his 2018 inflation forecast to 1.3% from 2.5%. With inflation coming in even lower, we think the rate hike they did earlier was a one and done, though that will ultimately depend on the new governor. Former Central Bank Deputy Governor Nur Shamisa Muhammad Yunus is widely tipped to replace Mr. Mohammed, who left under a cloud when questions were raised about the bank's role in a land purchase deal linked to the troubled Malaysia Development Berhad State Fund. The troubled Satu Malaysia Development Berhad State Fund. The tax move will not show up in May inflation, in the May inflation figures reported yesterday, with the consumer prices rising to 1.8% from a year ago, pushed by the higher transport cost. In March, the central bank's projected inflation will average 2% to 3% this year. ANZ trimmed its 2019 inflation forecast to 1.7% from 2.9%. Lastly, a month into office, Dr. Mahathir has moved swiftly to fulfill campaign promises, which included scrapping the GST. The government is setting aside 3 billion Malaysian ringgit for the rest of this year to subsidize some pump prices. Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng said this month. Bank Negara in January was one of the first to raise interest rates in Asia. The majority of economists surveyed in May and June predicted the key rate will remain at 3.25% until the end of the year. Our next step is education. UK and Egypt signed a deal for British universities to set up in Cairo, Cairo campuses. Egyptian officials says UK universities will be catalyst for broader partnership between Cairo and London. The UK and Egypt signed an agreement on Tuesday facilitating the establishment of British branches in North African country. The memorandum of understanding was inked between UK universities Minister Sam Gamer and Egypt's Minister of Higher Education Khalid Abdel Ghaffar at the Education World Forum in London. The pact will give the UK higher education sector a competitive advantage in Egypt, a statement by the British Department of Education said. I welcome the contribution of by this partnership will make the both the UK and Egypt economies and the wider benefits it will provide to the students and institutions in both countries. Gamer said in the statement. Egypt's Abdul Ghaffar said the collaboration will support the demands of labor market. He added in the statement that he released by the UK government and the Egyptians are excited by the prospect of British colleges in their country, which he said will be catalyst for broader international partnership between the UK and Egypt in research, innovation and mobility. According to a review by the official US and aid agency, USAID, the Egyptian higher education own system has expanded rapidly over the past few years, but Egypt universities suffer from poor governance and underfunding and overcrowding. Quoting, despite being one of the largest exporters of skilled labor, Egypt is suffering from a shortage of appropriately skilled technical professionals worker, making it very difficult for the business sector to deploy technology or technologically advanced processes, products and services, the US agency said. Was our session for news. Thank you for listening and have a good morning. Thank you guys for listening to us for the news session. After that, we will leave you to have a very good morning and blessed, and see you again every time. Was DJ Mahmoud, and thank you for staying with us.